Welcome back to English Learn Day, the place where stories help you grow, succeed, and master your English naturally. Today, we're exploring the powerful and unpredictable journey of one of the most creative minds in history, Steve Jobs. A man who was fired from his own company, and then came back to change the world. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever failed at something you cared deeply about? Have you ever been rejected, even after giving your best? If you've ever doubted your worth because of a mistake, this story will remind you that failure isn't the end, it's part of the path. Steve Jobs didn't start out as a genius. He was curious, intense, and sometimes difficult. But from a young age, he loved to explore, ask questions, and imagine things no one else could see. He dropped out of college. He studied calligraphy for fun. He walked miles just to eat at a free meal center. He didn't have a clear plan, but he had passion. At 21, he started Apple with his friend Steve Wozniak in a garage. They had no money, no office, no guarantees, just an idea and a dream. And that dream became a company that would later revolutionize technology. But success came fast. Too fast. And with it came pressure, conflict, and eventually, betrayal. Just 10 years after founding Apple, Steve Jobs was fired from his own company. Imagine that, building something from nothing, then being told, you're not needed anymore. It broke him. For a while, he disappeared from the spotlight. He felt lost, embarrassed, rejected. But here's where the story changes, and where your story can change too. When Steve Jobs was fired, he had every reason to give up. He had lost his company, his reputation, and the dream he built with his own hands. For a while, he felt empty. But slowly, something surprising happened. He started to feel free. With nothing left to prove, he could finally focus on what he loved again, creating. So, he started from scratch. He founded a new company called Next. He bought a small animation studio, which later became Pixar. These decisions didn't make headlines at first. They weren't glamorous. But they were the seeds of something bigger. During this time, Steve worked quietly, but with deep purpose. He explored new ideas, made bold choices, and learned to lead in a new way. He was no longer the young man trying to control everything. He had been humbled by failure, and that humility made him stronger. Meanwhile, Apple began to struggle without him. Years later, the company invited him back, not as a backup, but as a savior. Steve returned, not angry, but wiser. He brought everything he had learned, and with a small team, rebuilt Apple from the ground up. What followed changed the world: the iMac, the iPod, the iPhone. Products that didn't just work, they felt like magic. But that magic was born from silence, rejection, and patience. Steve often said, "You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward." His story teaches us something powerful. Sometimes, being rejected is the best thing that can happen to you. Because it forces you to start fresh, and when you start fresh, you can become new. If you're learning English and feel like giving up, remember Steve. Your mistakes are not failures, they're feedback. They're redirections. They're invitations to grow. When Steve returned to Apple, the company was lost. Too many products. Too much noise. No direction. So, the first thing he did wasn't to invent something new, it was to simplify. He canceled almost every project and focused on just a few. One computer. One team. One vision. He believed that simplicity was not just about design. It was about clarity. About knowing what matters most and removing the rest. That's how the iMac was born. Then the iPod. The iPhone. Each product felt easy, elegant, natural. But behind that simplicity was deep thinking. Every detail was intentional. Every decision, refined. Steve used to say, simple can be harder than complex. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean. And that's true for everything, even learning English. When you try to do too much at once, you get lost. You open 10 grammar books. Watch 5 videos. Study for hours, and still feel confused. Why? Because you're filling your mind with noise. But what if you did what Steve did? Simplify. Focus on one thing. One small goal. One lesson per day. One word you truly understand. Learning deeply, not just fast. That's how you build fluency, not by doing more, but by doing better. Steve Jobs didn't invent success. He designed it with patience, clarity, and courage. And you can do the same. Not just in technology. In your habits. In your thinking. In the way you speak, act, and grow. So today, ask yourself, what can I remove? What's distracting me? And what really matters? Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simplify. Steve Jobs wasn't just a man of technology, he was a master of communication. His presentations were more than product launches. They were performances. People didn't just watch, they felt. He didn't use complex words or long speeches. He used pauses, silence, simplicity. He made people feel that they were part of something bigger. And here's the secret, Steve didn't speak to impress. He spoke to connect. Every word had weight. Every phrase had rhythm. He didn't try to sound smart, he tried to sound true. That's what made his message unforgettable. You don't need to be a CEO to speak with power. You don't need perfect English to express yourself clearly. You just need presence, honesty, and the willingness to be simple and real. When Steve introduced the iPhone, he didn't say, "We are releasing a revolutionary mobile communication device with advanced computational integration." He said, "Today, we are introducing 3 revolutionary products, and they are all the same thing." The audience erupted. not because the words were fancy, but because they were clear. If you're learning English, take this lesson seriously. You don't have to speak fast or use big words to be understood. What you need is clarity, feeling, eye contact, confidence. Speak from the heart, even if your grammar isn't perfect. People remember how you made them feel more than what you said. Steve's voice built trust. His style built community. His message built a movement. And your English, even if it's quiet now, can one day build something too, a connection, a new opportunity, a moment that changes everything. So speak slowly. Speak honestly. And most of all, don't be afraid to be heard. Steve Jobs used to say, "I'm as proud of what we don't do as I am of what we do." That wasn't just about design. It was about identity. He knew that focus creates power, and that clarity leads to confidence. The same is true for you, as an English learner. Many people get lost trying to learn everything at once. They memorize hundreds of words, try complex grammar, switch between 5 different courses. But more isn't always better. What matters is consistency, intention, and progress, one step at a time. Focus on the essentials. Speak a little every day. Read slowly. Listen with attention. Repeat until it feels natural. Don't just study the language, live it. Use it in real life, even if it's just in your thoughts. Say thank you in English. Describe what you see around you. Ask yourself questions in English. This is how fluency is built, not overnight, but over time. Steve also believed in something deeper, building not just products, but experiences. He wanted people to feel something. And you, as a learner, can do the same. Use your English to connect, not just to pass a test. Use it to express your ideas, your story, your truth. You don't need to sound perfect. You need to sound real. Progress isn't measured by grammar charts. It's measured by moments, the first time you understand a native speaker, the first time you answer with confidence, the first time you don't freeze when someone says, "Hi, how are you?" Every time you choose to practice instead of quit, you are building your voice. Every time you speak, even with fear, you are becoming someone new. That's what Steve Jobs understood better than anyone. Your voice shapes the future. And your future starts the moment you decide to speak clearly, simply, and with purpose. So here's what we've learned. Steve Jobs wasn't born iconic. He was rejected, fired, and misunderstood. But he never stopped believing in the power of vision, simplicity, and persistence. He didn't let failure define him. He let it refine him. You may not be building a computer or launching a product, but you are building something just as powerful, yourself. Your voice. Your future. Your confidence. And just like Steve, you don't have to know exactly where the road will lead. You just have to take the next step with purpose. When you struggle to learn English, remember, even Steve Jobs had to start over. Even he had to stay quiet for a while, learn, rebuild, and rise again. Progress is not always loud. Sometimes it's slow, invisible, silent. But it's there, in every word you speak, every sentence you try, every time you don't give up. Maybe today you speak with hesitation. Maybe your vocabulary feels small. That's okay. Because clarity comes with practice. Confidence comes with effort. And fluency comes from patience. You are not here to impress. You are here to connect, to communicate, to express who you are. So speak, even if your voice shakes. Simplify, even if the world tells you to be complicated. Keep going, even if progress feels small. And if this story inspired you, if it reminded you that your mistakes don't define your future, then subscribe to English Learn Day and share this video with someone who needs it. Because here, we don't just learn English. We learn how to grow, how to believe, how to begin again. You are more powerful than you think. Just like Steve.